Nice to meet you all. I would like to introduce myself. My name is Ani Adiwinata, Landscape Governance Specialist based in C4 Bogor, Indonesia. In Canopy project, since Canopy Phase 1, C4 has been coordinating and implementing policy research components. And in Canopy Phase 2, actually we were put as Objective-3, but in Canopy Phase 2, we have been labeled as Objective-4. So if you would like to know the historical research activities in Canopy, you could also look at the documentations on the Objective-3 research activities in Canopy Phase 1. In Canopy Phase 2, specifically Objective-4 aims to foster resilient institutional arrangements at the landscape level for the benefit of the smallholders. In East Nusa Tenggara and also in West Nusa Tenggara, our main partner was WWF Indonesia, the Nusa Tenggara program. And in Gunung Kidul project site, we have been working closely with the Watershed Center under the Ministry of Environment and Forestry. In Yogyakarta, we have been collaborating with the Faculty of Forestry, Gadjah Mada University, and Forest Management Unit of Yogyakarta under the provincial level of Environmental and Forestry Agency. In all project sites, we have been working closely with the governments at all levels, starting from a district, provincial level, and also at the village level. Also, we have been working with the researchers from local university like the Mataram University in Lombok and also the Nusa Cendana University in Kupang. And this is to make sure the policy platform could support the implementations of recommendation from the other objective, could be translated into practice and scaled up by internalizing the recommendations into a government budgeting and planning system. So in Canopy Phase 2, we have identified that the main barriers in the policy research component or policy advocacy processes because there has been a dynamics changes in the policy at the national level. And we think that it would be important to foster resilient institutional arrangements, particularly based on the community-based institutional arrangements that has been part of a daily community-based forest management practices. So the main research questions that we would like to address in Canopy Phase 2, actually we want to identify what and how recommendations could be formulated to improve the effectiveness of the current institutional arrangements, basically to support improved coordination functions on the ground in ensuring the policy recommendation can smoothly be implemented. And we have to implement this by closely working with our local government partners, such as the regional planning agency at all levels. And also we have been initiating the multi-stakeholder platform or forum to facilitate the participatory ongoing consultations and discussions, basically to ensure the policy advocacy process could be more adopted and tailored to the local context and the local stakeholders' need. So in line with the task for Objective-4, aiming for fostering resilient institutional arrangements at the landscape level, we have developed the Conceptual Framework to begin with, basically to guide us in the developing the baseline, particularly in assessing what are the gaps in the policy platform and also who are the stakeholders involved, so we can understand how the policy process or the policy advocacy could be participatorily implemented and developed. So in the conceptual framework, the main objective is to foster resilient institutional arrangements by ensuring there is a vertical integration and also the horizontal integrations. What do we mean by vertical integration is to make sure there is an interconnectivity between the policy started at the national level and is adopted at the provincial level, and then also used as a guidance to implement the policy into practices at the district and the village level. And particularly, we would like to encourage that the institutional arrangements to become resilient, it should be based on the community-based practices, what we call as the community inclusive business model. And also at each level, from village, district to provincial, we are facilitating the development and the formulation of the grand strategy for integrated landscape approach. Of course, this should be in line with the regional medium development plan developed and used by each level of the government to as the guide for the development programs and activities. Dear respected independent reviewers team, on behalf of the Objective-4 team working on the policy research in Canopy Phase 2, I would like to explain on the overall activities that we have been conducted in the last 4 years in 3 project sites, as well as some kind of potential impacts as well, and how we have been working on this issue under the participatory action research. So I will be explaining in 3 main parts. First, I would like to explain first about the conceptual framework that we have been using. Basically, this is providing a guidance for us in implementing tailored participatory action research in 3 project sites. And then secondly, I would like to discuss in detail from each project site's activities and also findings. First, I will be discussing the activities in Gunung Kidul district as well as in Yogyakarta, and then I will explain in parallel our activities in East Nusa Tenggara as well as in West Nusa Tenggara. So in our policy research team, we have developed the conceptual framework to guide us in conducting the research from year 1 to year 4. So we would like to foster there is a vertical integrations and also the horizontal integrations. Vertical integrations mean there is more integrated strategy, whether it's a planning or in a practice from a community level, village level, district level, and also to the provincial level. Of course, this should be referred to the strategy at the national level that has been developed by the national level government. And in each level, we would like to also foster how to facilitate more horizontal integration between different sectors. And for example, forestry, agriculture, and then community kind of based empowerment agency or programs. And then this would be adopted, to the higher level government at the district and then a provincial level. To begin with also in parallel, we are trying to strengthen the community level kind of initiative through developing the community inclusive business model. To support how the institutional arrangements recommendations could become effective as part of the resilience organizations, complementary agroforestry alternative at the landscape level are needed. So in our team, we also map out together with our local stakeholders, whether a local community, NGO, civil society, and also a university and also local governments, what would be the strategy as part of the agroforestry alternative that could fit within a different kind of forest functions and also the zonations along the watershed. So we use the watershed as our unit of analysis. So the strategy with regards to the agroforestry alternative would be differentiated between, whether it's in the upstream, the midstream, or in the downstream, and whether the forest is for production forest, protected forest, national park, or nature reserve. And 3 main components also we have to consider, whether this is for conservation, mainly in the buffer zone area to the nature reserve, for example, and also how this strategy could enhance the local livelihood and also utilizing the environmental services, as part of the ecotourism based initiative that are implemented by the local community. So now I would like to give some more explanations and some overview on how the activities has been conducted in detail, starting from Gunung Kidul and also from Yogyakarta. In our project site, we are mainly focusing in Gunung Kidul as well as with the other project objective team. In Gunung Kidul, based on our conceptual framework, we would like to facilitate the development of grand strategy for ecotourism's kind of base initiative. This has been really the main focus and the main sources for regional economic development by the local government. However, we could not really focusing in the process to facilitate this grand strategy because the local government, they don't have enough baseline data. So that's why in this kind of phase 2, we start then by developing the integrated baseline data through participatory process. So basically this is to help the government to develop more landscape-based planning, so there is more synergy between forestry and other related sectors. So we are focusing on the Bribin watersheds in Gunung Kidul district. This is based on consultations with our local stakeholder as well as with the community level. So the Bribin watershed is the biggest watershed in Gunung Kidul districts, and this is also part of the priority in the planning strategy of the provincial government. And the second study we are conducted beyond Gunung Kidul district is in Yogyakarta, in the other district. So this is basically because we would like to find out what would be the best practice for institutional arrangements, and there is not enough options for us to study on this kind of arrangement. So that's why we are collaborating with the Faculty of Forestry in Gadjah Mada University and also with the Forest Management Unit, try to analyze and documenting the lesson learned from the case of community-based ecotourism. This has been developed based on a partnership between Forest Management Unit and also with the local cooperative. In our study, when we are developing the participatory integrated watershed baseline data, we are focusing on Bribin watershed. So the Bribin watershed is actually the major watershed in Gunung Kidul district. The area covers around 50,000 hectares, and this watershed is basically reflecting how the local community has been practicing the local management's uses, including agricultural practices, as well as teak plantation, for example. And this watershed is actually quite significant, providing underground water resources, because actually this watershed is based on the karst ecosystem. We have been conducting a study for a long time in Gunung Kidul, but we haven't really been aware about this karst ecosystem that would make a significant difference, with regards to the agroforestry practices that we could expand. So for example, these underground water resources could provide waters along the years. So Gunung Kidul district has been recognized as the area with the most driest area in Java Island. So basically there is abundance underground watersheds of resources available. So the underground landscape actually formed from the limestones that has been there for million years ago, and then there is an interconnected river hubs undergrounds that providing continuous water flows, for whole area of a district, Gunung Kidul district. So in our study, we try to map out how many numbers of caves, sinkholes, natural ponds, and also other kind of water spring, for example, distributions. So by having more in-depth understanding about these resources, actually better practices for developing agroforestry, both for a timber and non-timber forest product could be more well developed. And then also this would be like a better information, for the local government if they would like to give permits, for example, for the local community to develop ecotourism based on cave explorations. So they should be having a kind of a warning, if this already over the limit from the available caves that are there. So I guess with this, it would help a lot the local government, particularly the regional planning agency, in which we have been partnering in our research. So the karst ecosystem, as I mentioned, providing significant water resources for intensive agriculture practices throughout the year, and also ecotourism's potentials opportunity. But the main problems are that this area actually is on privately owned land, even though this is part of the kingdom's land property. But this is not the area like what we have in Sumbawa and also in West Timor, in which the forest area is clearly under the jurisdiction of the forestry agency, for example. So this is quite challenging to regulate the land use and also the exploitations or also the explorations based on the karst underground ecosystem conditions. So for this research in Gunung Kidul, we have been collaborating with the research team from the Water Research Center, and then we work with a different researchers under the multidisciplinary teams, and then we have produced 7 booklets. These 7 booklets has been disseminated at the village level to the head of the village and also to the representative of local community, as well as to the local regional planning agency. So with these booklets, from profiling the watershed is part of the focus of the booklet contents, and then there is the hydrological conditions that we also map out and then included in one of the booklet number 3. And then also we map out the potential for ecotourism and also a challenge, like the traditional mining that actually provide a threat for a karst ecosystem-based landscape. And then also we produce the videos, to communicate better, with our audience who don't have enough understandings about the karst ecosystem. So one of the important exercise that we have been conducted in our research is also to analyze the development of the farm forestry area from time to time, because we have been working on this farm forestry project or hutan rakyat. But actually we don't know whether this is decreasing or increasing. So throughout our map spatial-based analysis, we could see that there's actually the increased area for farm forestry or hutan rakyat and planted using teak, acacia, and other local species of timber. So in Yogyakarta, we are collaborating with the Faculty of Forestry team and also with the Forest Management Unit to document the community-based ecotourisms that has been initiated and developed in protected forests. So there are about 30 kind of hectares that are included in this initiative. So initially, community could not really harvest anything besides non-timber forest product, but that's quite limited. And the FMU has been facilitated the process to plant the kayu putih, the eucalyptus, in this area. But then that has become part of the ecotourism package that has been managed and initiated by the local community. So basically, with this county-based ecotourism initiative, this kind of providing a new paradigm, shifting the paradigm that protected forest is not really potential for providing economics incomes, for the local government and also for local community. But through this partnership, there is a profit sharing agreement, 75% for the local cooperative and their members, and then the 25% is for the local government, provided as the local government revenue to the provincial government. As part of the outputs in this study, we also documenting the lesson learned, from the process in initiating this partnership to managing it, and then how actually can be integrated with the other business of NTFP like the kayu putih that initially was planted as part of the rehabilitation project, but actually this could be developed, more integratedly with the processing that also managed by the forest management unit. So we have like 6 booklets documenting based on the thematic focus in the study, and also we compile this as part of the book that we are going to launch on the 12th of October. So as I mentioned, part of the impact I would like to explains that this has addressed the territorial and management conflicts, because in the past there's a lot of encroachments from the local community to the protected forest, and this has been like a win-win solution in which the community can get the income from managing the ecotourism, but also the protected forest could be left intact, and then this is something that are in the main task of the forest management unit. The benefit sharing, as I mentioned, 75% for the cooperative members and then the 25% for the provincial government. And to give you some ideas, there has been an increase in the revenue, from this business. But this is before the pandemic has struck Indonesians and also in other countries. That is from 140,000 dollars in 2017 that has increased about 20,000 US dollars. And if you compare this into the income per capita or per household, this has provided around 500 US dollar per person. And if you compare the income coming from teak harvesting, that equally about 300 US dollars. So I think this is much higher income, and then it's still growing. And now they have shifting the approach because of the pandemic situations, but to making sure that this business could be continued. However, there are some challenges. There is still some equity with regard to the social gap between those who are the member cooperative and the non-member cooperative. And also the business plan should be developed more integrated with more kind of ecological consideration. For example, the carrying capacity study should be conducted and should be a better baseline on the ecological perspective and ecological impacts. So now we are moving on to West Nusa Tenggara and also to East Nusa Tenggara. So we have collaborating with the WWF Indonesia Nusa Tenggara program, but along the way, because we have to make sure the participatory action approach could be implemented, we have been collaborating with different parties, including local university, with the NGOs, and also mainly the local government at village, district, and provincial level. So in West Timor, we are focusing our activity in Timor Tengah Selatan. So as part of the grand strategy that we have developed in Canopy Phase 1 to foster a more integrated management at the landscape level, particularly for the non-timber forest product, we have to have mapped out what will be the priority non-timber forest products should be developed along the watershed. So there are different commodities or NTFP that we are focusing on. In the upstream area that we are focusing on, working on the forest honey that are collected from the forest. And then Indugifera, I think the Objective-4 are working on this. And then also the screw tree that they are working, this is the main non-timber forest product actually being researched by Objective-1 and also other commodities. So in East Nusa Tenggara, in Canopy Phase 1, we have been working in a district level intensively because under the decentralization policy, the district government has more powers to manage the forest. But since the law number 23 being implemented in 2014, we kind of shifting our facilitation process to the provincial level. And we have been quite fortunate, the provincial level adopted the approach that we have been implemented at district level. And then we been able to facilitate the formulations of the non-timber forest product local government regulation at the provincial level signed by the governor. So we set up in the beginning the multi-stakeholder platform representing different stakeholders and also different agency across different sectors. But before we do the policy advocacy, we conducted a series of baseline. So there is a baseline data, including the spatial data analysis, and then the non-timber forest product potential analysis, and that been implemented or practiced by the local community. We conducted the household survey, and then also we do the stakeholder analysis, institutional gap analysis, and also the policy assessment to identify which policy that actually are missing, and then which policy that we should put there to make sure the non-timber forest product development could be optimized throughout the province. And then along the process in Canopy Phase 2, we developed a different regulations also signed by the governor through the SK, a letter of decree, or from the local government regulation or peraturan gubernur. So this regulation actually provided more guidelines, how to operationalize those a local government regulation, the Perda that we initiate before, and how this could be implemented throughout the process, so the implementation on the ground is actually kind of in line with the overall local regulation on non-timber forest product. In the last 2 years, we have been facilitating the process to establish the Center for Mutis Forest Honey Production and Marketing, or what we call it the Sentra Madu Mutis. So this is just an example how the regulation could be implemented on the ground, and we focusing on this Center of Mutis Forest Honey Production and Marketing as part of the inclusive business model that we are going to facilitate, that we already identified in our conceptual framework in the beginning. So now we are happy to say that this already established, supported by the letter of decree signed by the governor, and we got support from the local government budget at district level to build the building itself, and the facility actually provided by the national level government through the social forestry unit, regional unit for Nusa Tenggara and Bali. So they provided the equipment, to be part of, this center, because we have the building and then we now have the equipment, and the forest management units are the one who organizing this, to be materialized, instructed, or parts of the planning that already implemented by the social forestry agency. So in Sumbawa district, in West Nusa Tenggara, we are dealing with the forest landscape with the domination of production and protected forests. And then we also using the watershed as our unit of analysis, and we are closely working with the forest management unit of Batu Lanteh, and also with the local village government in Batu Dulang and Pelat. And also we are lucky that there is another ongoing project in parallel under the World Bank funded Forest Investment Program, FIP. So we have been collaborating with this team, so they are focusing their activities in collaboration with the forest management unit in 10 villages. So we are lucky our canopy village in Batu Dulang and Village are included in these 10 villages that the FIP are facilitating the process for the development of the small and medium scale enterprises, focusing on non-timber forest product. So we also map out a different products, non-timber forest product and timber, in a different zonation of the watershed, and also according to the forest function, whether it's protected forest or in the production forest. In the protected forest, it is allowed to cut the trees as long as managed under the forest management unit, but there's a possibility to develop the farm forestry or hutan rakyat that we have identified in Pelat, one of the village that we are focusing on in Sumbawa. So slide 22. So along with the process in parallel that we have been facilitating in East Nusa Tenggara, in West Nusa Tenggara we also facilitating a different regulations, tailored to the needs, what would be the main regulation needed actually to stimulate more community-based practices, focusing on a different non-timber forest product or on timber. So we have been providing the inputs to the manuscript, kind of academic manuscript. That's what we usually have to put together first before we actually facilitating the formulation of a particular regulation at the provincial level. So we conducted the baseline in conducting, what will be the gaps in the forest management unit documents, planning documents, and also what would be the key performance indicators, that are applied by the forest management unit, sort of thing. So we have been facilitating also the multi-stakeholder forum at the provincial level to produce the the local government regulation on forest management, in translating the law number 23, in which shifting the authority for forest management from district to the provincial level. So we conducted also kind of facilitations how the policy formulations could be developed at district and the village level. So this is quite important because now the village level has more power, and then they have more funded, allocated from the national government, so they have more authority to manage their own budget at the moment. So we also produce different regulations, as a follow-up of this local government regulation as the overarching umbrella to provide more guidelines, how to implement this the local government regulations to be able to be implemented on the ground. So the policy research team in Canopy Phase 2 would like to present some important lesson learned. For example, one, we would like to highlight that developing the conceptual frameworks to foster vertical and horizontal integrations has been really useful in guiding the team in conducting policy gaps analysis, as well as the stakeholder analysis, as well as to do the policy advocacy to make sure the evidence-based recommendations could be highlighted and could be promoted to be adopted by the local government. However, some gaps have been identified. For example, the lack of baselines at the government level has been quite significantly providing some challenge to us. For example, in Gunung Kidul. So that's why we would not be able to directly develop the grand strategy at the landscape level in Gunung Kidul districts, but we have to take one step backward by developing the integrated baseline using participatory approach. And then this baseline has been adopted by the regional planning agency and then included in their regional medium-term development planning documents. On the other hand, in West Timor and also in Sumbawa, we have been conducting the baseline study in year 1, also following up what we have been conducted in Canopy Phase 2. And we focusing only on non-timber forest product, for example, in West Timor, because the situations there where the landscape are dominated mainly by national and protected forests, we just focusing on non-timber forest product. And also in Sumbawa, we could promote both timber and non-timber forest product to be offered as the integrated management option at the landscape level. So in our team also with the local stakeholder, we try to map out what would be the complementary agroforestry alternative at the landscape level, considering the forest functions, whether is it a national forest, protected forest, or production forest, and also the considering zonation in the watershed as our unit of analysis. So agroforestry practices should be recommended differently for these different categories of landscape. And also the management aspect should cover the conservation, particularly this is for the upstream level, for the buffer zone, and also for the forest and land rehabilitations activities. And also the other component would be for enhancing local livelihood, and also for identifying the best approach focusing on environmental services. The second point for lesson learned that the Canopy policy research teams would like to highlight is that to support the effectiveness of institutional arrangements to become resilient, having identified complementary agroforestry alternative at the landscape level is quite important, particularly for a different landscape zonations. So we identified the agroforestry practices based on the forest functions, whether it's a national forest or protected forest, and also based on the classifications of the watershed, whether it's an upstream, midstream, or the downstreams. And also we have to consider the management aspect, whether the focus of this agroforestry practices mainly for conservations at the buffer zone, particularly in the upstream area, or more for enhancing the local livelihood at the midstream area and also in production forest, or also to consider the environmental services for economic development. This could be across from upstreams to downstreams, and also to include the different forest function classification, including the protected forests, and also particularly the production forest, and also at the buffer zone of the national park. So the third lesson learned that we would like to highlight as well that to foster the vertical and horizontal integrations, particularly it's important to facilitate the policy platform at all levels to make more synergies of program and strategies to be promoted under integrated landscape approach. So this should be supported by a strong baseline study and also policy analysis and stakeholders analysis. So that's why this is quite important to foster the evidence-based policy recommendations. And management direction should be included three components: the area managements, and also the business management, and also the institutional arrangement and managements that include facilitating the conducive or enabling conditions supported by policy platforms tailored in responding to the local needs and local stakeholders. So conditions for research adoptions by the government partners, particularly is important that whatever we have been trying to foster in the policy advocacy process, it should be in line with the national policy strategy that should be translated into the provincial and also a district level as well as a village level. And this is to be more practical, considering the local livelihoods conditions. So we would like now to conclude by presenting the recommendation for follow-up research. The most effective approach for scaling up and order adoption should be further tested with regards to find the most effective strategy and approach, considering the required enabling policy conditions, and also should be foster for effective landscape-based forest management that tailored to the local context. Research is needed to give a full understanding on scenario for complementary agroforestry alternative at the landscape level to support the effectiveness of institutional arrangements to become resilient. In Canopy Phase 2, we have addressed some of these agroforestry alternatives. However, more comprehensive understanding to have more options in terms of agroforestry alternative at the landscape level should be conducted. Evidence-based policy recommendations for creating synergy should be promoted at the landscape level by having more closely collaboration between forestry sector and also with the other sector, for example, agriculture sectors, with extensive approach or strategy for developing food crops in the forest area, for example. So this should be addressed using more integrated approach, particularly based on more research supporting a good baseline data.